The Love Life and Lose Weight podcast will teach you the art and science of changing your habits around food. I'm your host, advanced certified weight and life coach, Heather Beardsley. I've helped hundreds of women just like you figure out how to stop dieting, lose weight, and love life on the journey to goal weight and beyond. Hey, welcome to episode 34. This episode, I'm going to teach you how I troubleshoot weight loss stalls with my clients. I think it will be really helpful for you to kind of see how I do it as a coach, and then maybe you can apply some of these methods for yourself if you're having trouble, or you can't figure out why you're not losing or why you stopped losing. So the first thing I do with my clients is I ask them how much weight they've lost. And you'd be surprised. Like, we don't always have that information because if you haven't committed to having a day that you record your progress, whether that is recording your weight on a scale or your measurements or whatever you're using as your way to gauge your progress, then we don't know if you're being successful or not. It's kind of like you're traveling without a GPS and you can't even locate where you're at, where your position is. So we can't do any troubleshooting unless you commit to a regular, usually for 95% of my clients. They're weighing in on a certain day at the same time every week. If you're committing to weight loss, you've got to either take your measurements or gather your data or get on the scale without fail the same week, day, week after week, whether you want to or not. And we can, I can't remember if I've done a podcast on scale drama or not, but that's a topic for another podcast. If you have scale drama, there's a way to work on your mindset around the scale so it doesn't feel so awful like it does for many of my clients. But suffice it to say, you got to get on the scale every week to even know if you're losing weight or have some idea. The scale measures mass. It does not measure, unless you have a smart scale, what exactly it's measuring. It just tells you your relative relationship to gravity in any one moment. So whether that's fat or muscle or water weight or what have you, you don't really know, but it's a way that we sort of check progress with some caveats attached to it, right? So the first one is to commit to regular weigh-ins so that you have data to help give you somewhat reliable feedback about what's happening. It won't be completely accurate, but it will give you good information to use with other information. Okay, so that's step one. So the next thing I do is I take a look at, the number change. And if that number is within a pound of the week before, could be a loss, could be a gain, could be reflective of water weight. That could even be up to 3 pounds, depending on how much you weigh. Larger bodies can fluctuate more with water weight or period weight or, oh my gosh, Chinese food. Clients all gain about 3 pounds at the morning after they have Chinese food. I just say, don't have Chinese food before you weigh in. It skews your results. Okay. Because the MSG that they put in the Chinese food causes a lot of retention of water. It's just a common phenomena. Okay. So, all right. The second thing that we do once we see the weight, if there's a gain, certainly, like, we got to figure out what's going on. So then we're going to go to the next level, which is I ask them to tell me how many times in that weigh-in week. So let's say I'm meeting with them on the day that they weigh in. Let's call it Friday. Most of my clients weigh in on Fridays. So from that current Friday back through 7 days, I ask them to flip through their daily plans and tell me how many times they had an overeat. And the overeat is a specific definition. It's not subjective. We try to make it as scientific and data driven as we can. Of course, it is subjective because it's your sense of whether you overate or not. But nonetheless, we try to get as scientific as we possibly can. So the definition of an overeat is any time that you've eaten without physical hunger present, and or if you've continued to eat to a sensing physical fullness, or you've gone past what would have been enough. Okay, now that is very subjective, right? But you can really focus here. Every time you weigh in, I want you really focusing here and being honest as you flip through the past 7 days that gave you that result on the scale or your measurements, how many times you did that. Now, if you're using my daily plan PDF, it has an assessment place where it asks you right there. It helps you quickly assess, or if you use the one from the membership, whichever one you use, it doesn't matter. The point is, before you make a new plan for the next day, that you go back over the day before and you just honestly assess whether you overate. Remember, overeating is eating anytime you don't have physical hunger present. So you're eating with a relatively full stomach, right? You're not hungry, or you're eating to fullness or past enough. So we're going to count how many times that happened that week. And we're going to check that against the results that you got. And that way you get to really understand how many times in a week you can overeat and how that plays with the results that you get. So for me, having been very dialed into this for years, I know if I overeat more than twice in a week, so if it's like 3 times, I might maintain, I might have a slow, like a small gain. If it's 4 times, I will definitely gain weight. If it's 5 times, it's more. See? Now, everybody is different. Every metabolism is different, and everybody's definition of how much they're overeating is also different. So your results will be unique to you, and your pattern of overeats, your relationship of your overeats to the results that you get will be unique to you. Your job is to figure out what those are. So let's say you're like me and you try to keep your overeats to 2 or less per week if you're in weight loss mode, and you had 4 overeats. Well, I would ask you, like, okay, well, what was going on that you had 2 more? So my first question to them would be, if you were already at 2 overeats for the week, why did you choose to overeat the 3rd time? And so my client will usually be like, well, I don't know. I have to go back and look because I don't really remember. So I would say, okay, go back to your 3rd overeat. And the first thing I would ask them is, did you realize when you made the choice to overeat that you would be over where you wanted to be in your overeats if you made that choice? So the question is, are you keeping track of your overeats, and are you keeping them front of mind as you're making your food choices during the week? So many times it's just kind of inadvertent because you're not keeping track of the cumulative overeats in your week. And so you're just like, oh, like 1 more slice of pizza won't matter. Like, I've been good all week. The brain will lie to you. It's not trying to sabotage you. It's just like, oh, it doesn't really matter. Like, we're fine. Like, I remember all the good stuff I did, but I don't, like, you forgot about the other overeat you had on Sunday, or the one that you had on, the Saturday before. You see what I'm saying? So we always want to have some idea when you start your day and you make your plan where you're at with your cumulative overeats. So sometimes you might still want to overeat. And if that's the case, at least you've made that choice knowing you might be giving away your ability to lose weight that week. But you could try to, keep it to like the minimum overeat and see if you could still lose weight. Like, the reason why we want to always be aware of what our data is not to be a buzzkill, but it's just to be intentional with your actions, right? Because you're kind of expecting yourself to lose weight, but if you're not looking at your data and your number of overeats, you're kind of sticking your head in the sand too. So you're like, oh, I want to lose weight, but I don't really want to look at the data to see where I'm at with it. Okay. You gotta pay attention. You want to win the race? You gotta kind of know where your performance needs to be. And then you need to train for that. It's no different than weight loss. Okay. So that's how I deal with frequency of overeats. I look at how many there are. I look at my awareness of my client over like their agency over constraining their overeats so that they can get the results they want. And if they're not aware of it, we want to work on the awareness. Okay. And if they are aware of it and they're also choosing to overeat, that's a whole nother thing too. It's like, well, this isn't working. It's like you're wanting to overeat. Let's say it's 4 times a week. And if you do that, you know that you don't lose weight, but yet each week you're doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And that's just a requirement for frustration. And so if that's the case, like I would just talk to my client about what their expectations are and what they're willing to do. Like what would be the next level where they could overeat just a little bit better for weight loss. So if they're having like I might work on making the overeats slightly less. So let's say one of their overeats is they had 4 pieces of pizza. And I would say, okay, well, can you just try to have 3 pieces this week when you have pizza night? So overeat a little bit better and see if it gets you the results. I mean, I always, habit change and the science on that shows that just try to experiment with the minimum action that feels doable that might make a difference in the result that you get. Okay. So that's the second layer of troubleshooting that we do. The third layer is to ask my clients how many times they ate food that was not on their plan. And there's a reason why I ask for this information. And maybe in last week's podcast, you heard me say about Pareto's principle and how planning doesn't directly affect whether or not you lose weight, because it's actually about what you put in your mouth and when. So if that's the case, then why do I care about whether you planned or not? Well, it gives me really good information because if my client is eating off plan more than like 2 times in the week, I know that how they really want to eat is not reflected in the way that they are planning. So there's a disconnect there. So they're making one plan thinking that that's how they should eat, but the way that they actually want to eat is very different. And usually, what this suggests is that there's a bunch of virtuous planning going on where there's old ideas of virtuous foods, good foods that are associated with weight loss, and that like you can't plan any bad foods, like so-called bad foods, the ones that the diet industry says are terrible for weight loss, which we know is just, for the vast majority of us, it's just bullshit. My boss in the membership, Corinne Crabtree, her mom, is like famous for losing, like she's a Southern lady and she lost over 100 pounds just eating less of all of her favorite Southern foods, which are traditionally like reviled for weight loss by the diet industry, her fried foods and, the foods that have a ton of butter in them and things like that. Fast foods. You can lose weight eating those foods as long as you don't overeat them. And so if we take that diet mentality of future foods and we give lip service to how We teach weight loss, which is you have to plan for the foods that you actually fucking want to eat. And you have to get real with yourself about that. If you're going off plan more than twice in a week and you're eating foods that you're not planning, the remedy for that, for troubleshooting, is to take every food that you ate in the past week off plan. And I tell them, put it on the plan for next week. You need to plan it. The other thing that will come up when I ask about how many times you're off plan is that they'll say to me, well, I only planned for, you know, pizza is like my favorite, 2 slices of pizza, but I had 3. And if that's the case, then I know what's happening is that you are parceling out quantities for yourself and you're bypassing your stomach, which is the one who's supposed to be in charge. So in other words, your mind is running the weight loss show rather than your body. You're cutting your body cues out of the conversation about when and how much to eat. That is only up to your stomach. It's like your mind makes a plan for what to eat. And then your stomach tells you when it's time to eat by the presence of physical hunger and when to stop eating by the presence of satisfaction and a lack of physical fullness. As soon as you feel physically full, you've eaten past enough and you've overeaten. Okay. So that those kinds of mindsets that can hose weight loss results are reflected in the number of times that you've been able to plan. Okay. So I hope that helps. If you have questions, I want you to come to Instagram and ask me about these. Okay. The fourth level of troubleshooting that I go over is to check for how's your water, how's your sleep. A lot of times this gets glossed over for my members. Like they'll commit to it early on and then they're just like, oh no, like I have it on lock. That's what they say. I have it on lock. But I'm like, well, how do you know? What are you using to give yourself data feedback that you're getting a minimum of 64 ounces every single day? Fat loss for the body, like I like to think about it as like, you ever see a rug cleaner work? It has a reservoir of water and it shoots water down into the rug. And then the vacuum part then pulls it through the fibers and then sucks it back up again. And that's how I like to think about fat loss happening out of your cell. The body needs plenty of water and a bunch of other things too. But this one part about like using up all the fat from the cell requires water, because when you've used the fat, the stored fat that is stored on your body in a cell, and you've been, losing weight and stuff like that, the cell stays intact, even though it eventually becomes empty of the fat that it used to hold. And the body will hold on to this empty cell and fill it with water just to like hold it in place in case the body never wants to get rid of structures. It wants to like hold on to them in case it needs them. So although you might have been burning fat and these have got a bunch of empty fat cells, it'll hold on to them, fill them with water for up to 2 weeks until it really gets the idea like, oh, yeah, I don't think she's going to overeat again. Like, I don't think we're going to need to be storing fat. So we should just let these go. And that's when you'll flush a bunch of fat. We call it like a whoosh in the membership. You'll see your weight will drop a bunch all at once. So water is required for that. If you're low on water, like think about it. You can survive for only 2 days without water, I think. Is it 2 or 3 days? I'm not sure. You can survive for sometimes months without food, but only 2 days without water. So the body very tightly controls the amount of water that you have in the system. And if you start to run low, like, do you think your body's going to use a bunch of it to flush fat out of your body? No. It's like, shit, she doesn't have her needs met. We're going to hold on to everything. So this is why drinking water and getting more water in can really help you with, your weight loss results. Okay. So I'll look at the sleep and the water. The sleep, I'll ask my clients what their typical sleep patterns are and if that is currently being disrupted. If it is, there's probably something stressful going on in their lives that can also affect the nervous system and the body's willingness to release fat. So that could be going on too. So just check your sleep and your water. Make sure that you have a way of getting pretty accurate numbers. If you're not keeping track of the amount of sleep and water, you have to start keeping track of it because it could be a real player in stalling your weight loss. Okay, number 6. Oh, sorry. That was number 4, to check the water and sleep. Number 5, I'll get to this level when I get feedback like, no, like I haven't been overeating. I've been on plan. I've been doing all my movement, all my water, my sleep, check, 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 check. Like everything looks beautiful with all the data, except for the weigh in. And when that happens, I always say, okay, take out your planner and tell me exactly what you ate for the past week. And yeah, it's a little tedious, but there's always so much there that you can figure out. So here's how I do it. I just say, just tell me what you ate for breakfast, lunch, dinner, anything that you ate for the past 7 days. So just go through, write it all out on a fresh piece of paper with 7 rows. Okay, 7 rows. And then I want you looking. The first thing I do is I look for like quantities of food. I want to know like how much food is being consumed. For some clients, their perception of what enough is actually overeating for the weight that they are now. And this is especially true of clients who've already lost a bunch of weight, where they haven't adjusted enough for their new lower weight. And their expectation, their visual expectation of enough food is the one that's leading the decision to eat that much rather than your sense of fullness. Now, it still can be that they legit like don't feel full until they've had too much food. The stomach is one of these organs that will change its perception of enough as you lose weight. But it's an adaptation process that has to be triggered by eating less food. If any of you have been sick, or maybe you've done some fasting for a few days, I don't know if any of you have done that. Like I did it when I got my wisdom teeth out. Like I just did not want to eat hardly anything for almost a week. My jaw felt so bad. And when you go through a period of time when you've had much less food than what you used to, or even just a little bit less food over a period of time, if you then try to eat more like you used to eat, you will feel very overfull again. And so this is the process that the stomach goes through to adapt to less food and change its signaling of enough for us. And we know that this happens because, like, how do we know it happens? Well, we know that people who've lost a ton of weight, they adapt to eating less food as they go. Otherwise, think about this. The person who lost 100 pounds, right? They're used to eating an amount of food that kept that extra weight on them. And now they've lost all this weight. They're 100 pounds less and they're maintaining at that weight. Now, at 100 pounds or 100 pounds less, they still have a similar experience of being satisfied with the amount of food that they're eating. If this is your evidence that it's true, that your sense of enough is adaptive to the quantity over time that you give it. Okay. And the signaling of the hunger hormones that happens in the background also sort of follow those changes. But a lot of this is like changes in the stretching sensors in your stomach. There is such a thing. That's about all I know about it because I'm not a doctor, but safe to say that your sense of enough is adaptable. But if you don't go through a deliberate phase of being willing to eat less, such that you think you haven't had enough, and do that for up to 2 weeks to allow that adaptation to play out in your sense of enough, you will always be eating more than what you think is enough. And you will know that you're in that place because the scale won't change, even though you think you're only eating to enough and you should be losing weight. Okay. It's nuanced but it makes sense, right? So if you're still confused about this, just go back and listen to that last part again. Okay. Listen to it a few times and you'll understand what I'm saying. Okay. So the food review of the week, I look for amounts of food that seem to be too much that my client is thinking is enough. So is there a disconnect there? And I might ask okay, well, how many eggs did you have? Or how big was the sandwich? How much chips was it? To discover that. But mostly that's sort of the exception to the rule. Here's what tends to be discovered in the food review, the weekly food review, is that there's snacks being eaten. Fucking snacks. They hose so many of you, these snacks or these nighttime treats. I swear. And there's a selective amnesia going on with all of you about your fucking snacks. I can't stand snacks because it's very frustrating to see my clients thinking snacks are so wonderful when I know that they're hosing all of your weight loss, your indulgence in snacks. I mean, snacks are great when you're kids. You're small, you're young, you burn through energy, your metabolism's on fire and this and that. But by the time you're middle aged, you don't need snacks. Really, for 85% of you, you do not need snacks. The people who need snacks are the people who've never dieted in their life, and their metabolism is just running the same way that it did when they were 30. Okay. I mean, that kind of sucks for us, but it's the truth. Restrictive dieting will cause metabolism changes that sort of slow you down. Okay. They did this research on Biggest Loser contestants, and it's a known fact. Okay. So a lot of you are snacking for distraction and dopamine and to motivate yourself to get through a day. You should not be snacking for any of those reasons if you also want to lose weight. Snacking's great. If you don't want to lose weight, snack all you want. I don't give a shit. But if you want to lose weight, you got to let the snacking go for most of you. But you don't have to stop eating snacks. Okay? Here's the thing. You just place the snacks in with your meal when you're hungry. So you might want to put them on a separate plate and give yourself the option to have those and or whatever you planned for your meal. And you bring your stomach to the moment. If you're physically hungry, okay, you get to eat. Now remember, you only have so much space available for any of those foods that you want to have. You get to choose which ones go in there to enough. A lot of my clients have snack meals sometimes because they miss the crunchy pretzels or whatever it might be. You can have it, but you just can't have it after you've already had your meal. And now you want a snack and you're having it when you're not hungry. That's overeating. And that is the number one thing that hoses weight loss. And it's sometimes I have to get to the fifth level of troubleshooting. And I ask, why are you having snack? When are you having the snack? And they're like, oh, an hour and a half after dinner. And I'm like, well, did you count that as an overeat? And they're like, no, it's my snack. And I'm like, oh no, denial is not a river in Egypt, people. Anything you put in your mouth that you eat when you're not hungry is an overeat. And overeats sabotage weight loss. Please hear me when I say this. Don't tell yourself you have to restrict your snacks, foods. You get to have snack foods, but have them when you're hungry. Okay. Don't have them after a meal. I want you having just meals. And if you want to have a snack as a meal, that's fine. You want to have you half the meal is snack, half the meal is your regular meal food. That's fine. I don't care how you do it. But no snacking between meals. Okay? That's for little kids. And it just doesn't go with weight loss. They're not best friends. Okay. The finally level number 6 is like I can troubleshoot with a client and I can say, hey, I think this is what's going on for you. Let's try this for the next week. Let's adjust. Let's take the snacks away or what have you. Let's plan for the foods that you overate last week. Make sure you plan for them. But they still have this sense of like, but I'm not losing. Like, this isn't working. And I'm like, okay, well, if that's really true, let's find out. Because my job as a coach is to not believe my clients. And I say that with love. I really do. But your brain's conclusions are often not data driven. And so this is a great opportunity for the 6th level of troubleshooting to just go through your data. What I do is I say, all right, pull out your data for your weigh-ins at the beginning of each month for the last 12 months. And we just start taking numbers. So like right now we're in May. So I would say, okay, give me the beginning of May of last year. And then we go all the way through the year, June, July, August, and all the way through to the following April. And I just write down the beginning month weight for the past 12 months. And we compare. And we also look for patterns too. And the truth is, when you look at data like this over the previous 12 months, you can see that there's months that lend themselves to weight loss and there's months that don't. And you could even take this further and do like the past 3 years. And you could see that like for many of my clients, like for example, if August is the month, let's say they go to the lake with the family and it's for a month and there's lots of eating and drinking and stuff and they always come home and they'll have gained weight. Sometimes quite a bit, right? And they're just like, oh, it always hoses my weight loss when I go to the lake every August. Okay. And maybe that combined with like the holidays is year after year, like maybe it's 10 pounds. And then maybe in these other months that are good with weight loss, maybe you're losing like 2 or 3 pounds in those months. And when you take those all together, it's like a wash. And so, although the beginning number of weigh in, like a year ago this month, is almost the same as a year now, you can see that you are still losing weight in months where you have that that weight loss protocol on lock because it's like a typical month with no vacation at the lake. But it's the holidays and the lake that snows you every year. It like removes the progress that you've been able to make all year. And so the question, it becomes a new story. You see, it's not like, oh, I'm not losing weight. It's like, yes, I'm losing weight and I'm pretty good, but I just haven't figured out how to keep true to my weight loss goals or minimize the gain during, August when I'm at the lake and during the holidays. And if I can just stop the gaining on those months in my year, then I'll end up with a net loss now. And I'll start to get some positive momentum and see some different numbers on the scale stick. You see? So this kind of high level overview of month in and month out weighing and seeing the natural patterns that happen in your year can really inform what we talked about in episode 33, which is these exception times and really like modifying your approach to weight loss and staying true to your goals during those exception times. Okay. So these are the 6 levels of review. And of course there's some more, but these are the main ones that come to mind for this podcast episode. So if you're stalled, go through the 6 levels. If you have trouble, visit me on Instagram at Thrive in Midlife on the episode 34 reel. And if you're stuck or you have ahas or takeaways, come by, say hi. Let me know what's going on. Let me know how you found the episode. Make sure you join my mailing list for my book news coming out this summer. I'm really excited for how that unrolls here pretty soon. Okay, so stay focused and so long. Hey, if this episode was helpful, then let's connect. Visit hbeardsley.com/subscribe. That's hbeardsley.com/subscribe. You'll get a gift from me, exclusive subscriber content, and advanced notice of in-person events.